They thought you would break if they betrayed you, that you would crumble when they walked away. As they turned their back, they smiled, thinking the final move was theirs. But they failed to realize that the moment they lost access to you, their protection was also lost. Their illusion shattered, their mask slipped, and life, in its silent cruelty, began keeping score. You didn't chase, you didn't scream. You just vanished and rebuilt everything they assumed they had destroyed. Now, you are the person they swore you could never become, untouchable, unshakable, and far beyond their reach. So today, let's explore what truly happens when a good person is betrayed and life imparts a lesson far harsher than revenge. Through the lens of quiet power, emotional intelligence, and Stoic wisdom, we'll see this isn't just about betrayal, it's about transformation. Welcome to Think Stoic 101. Let's start. People who betray you seldom look back. They walk away with the assumption that they've won, that you're ashamed and shattered, left behind. But they don't see the storm they have ignited in silence, not the storm they anticipate. Not chaos, not rage, but a quiet kind. The kind that steadily builds inside you until it transforms into power. You see, betrayal doesn't only hurt, it rewires something within you. The first cut is always from those you allow closest. From strangers, the deepest wounds never come. They come from those who once treated your trust like a sacred thing, only to drop it as if it meant nothing. That is what makes betrayal so utterly. It's not only what they did, but what they forced you to question about loyalty, love, your own judgment, and even your worth. You sit in the silence, thinking, how did I not see that coming? Was I so blind? Did I deserve that? But the truth is, you weren't naive. You were genuine. You didn't fail. They did. They failed to respect the space you offered them. They failed to meet the level of your loyalty. The Stoic lesson is that pain is the first teacher. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." In other words, how you process the betrayal defines you, not the betrayal itself. You could permit it to break you, or you could permit it to build you deeper, quieter, wiser, and sharper. This is what the Stoics did. They didn't need closure. They didn't seek revenge. They used their pain to sculpt a new version of themselves, one that could not be touched in the same way again. It's a familiar story, and maybe it's yours too. Imagine giving someone everything, your energy, your honesty, your time, and one day they turn on you or just vanish. They spin a story to others where you become the villain. Suddenly, people you considered friends vanish. No chance to share your side, no explanation, just cold, calculated silence. You find yourself staring at your phone, waiting for a call from someone asking what transpired. Nobody calls. And so you find yourself sitting in the ashes, not only of a relationship, but of an illusion. The illusion that loyalty is always mutual, that love always shields, that good people don't get hurt. What they never foresaw was this. They believed you'd chase. They thought you'd beg. They thought you'd spiral into weakness, lose sleep, and drown in sadness. But what they did not expect was for you to rise in silence. They didn't anticipate. You would go ghost, not from bitterness, but from clarity, not from anger, but from self-respect. They never expected you to use your pain as fuel, your silence as strength, and they certainly, as hell, didn't expect you to come back not them, but to yourself. Your power was never found in the reaction. In Stoic philosophy, self-mastery, not strength, is the highest virtue. And when you are betrayed by someone, restraint, not retaliation, is the greatest power. You didn't try to expose them. You didn't make angry posts. You didn't lash out. You sat with the pain, let it burn, and then allowed it to transform you. That is the kind of pain they can never see, the one that becomes purpose, the one that becomes presence. And here's the twist. That pain was essential. Yes, you heard me right. Had they not betrayed you, you might still be bending over backward, still shrinking to make them feel large, still explaining yourself, still pouring into someone who is draining you in silence. Their betrayal acted as a blade, but it severed the cord that was stifling your growth. So, do not wish the pain away. Don't regret it. Honor it, for that pain marked the start of your rebirth. Let's make one thing clear from the beginning. There. Betrayal was not your fault. It wasn't that you were too much or that you weren't enough. It happened because they could not handle the light you carried into the room. People don't betray you because you have failed them. They often betray you because you are no longer easy to control. The psychology behind betrayal doesn't always arise from hate. It frequently comes from fear, or fear of your stability, fear of your standards, fear of your growth. The reality is, some people are hooked on chaos. They flourish in codependency, manipulation, and drama. And when they see you starting to set boundaries, speak for yourself, and think for yourself, they panic. You become a mirror, unfamiliar, reflecting all the parts of themselves they are not prepared to face. And rather than confronting that discomfort, they betray, they sabotage, they run. It was about their identity, not your insecurity. Always remember, another person's disloyalty reflects their character, not a verdict on your worth. Let's say you were supportive, generous, and kind. You gave second chances, stayed loyal, and always showed up, but they still stabbed you in the back or walked away. It's easy to take that personally, to think, perhaps I care too much. Maybe I'm the issue. No, you cared correctly. They simply lacked the emotional capacity to appreciate it. You were stable in a world hooked on chaos. You were real in a world that celebrates the fake. You were consistent. And that was intimidating to someone whose life was founded on inconsistency. The power of going silent there is a point in every healing journey, where you understand you don't need closure. You don't need to explain. You don't need to argue. You simply go silent. And that silence isn't avoidance. It's not weakness. It's power. Because when you cease engaging with the chaos, you cease fueling the very thing that was draining you. For individuals who crave control, your silence is the greatest threat. They flourish on your reaction, your emotional outbursts, your attempts to be understood, you defending yourself. It provides them a sense of importance. But the moment you become quiet, their grip loosens. They cannot twist words that go unspoken. They can't manipulate what they cannot hear. They are unable to control a mind that refuses to play their game any longer. And that is terrifying to them. You transform into a mirror they cannot bear. When you are silent, you are no longer a distraction. You no longer mask their emptiness. With your energy, they are suddenly left alone with themselves. No one to provoke, no one to blame, no one to project upon. It's like placing a narcissist before a mirror. But instead of seeing their reflection in your reactions, they are compelled to see the truth they have been avoiding. And the thing is, some people prefer to destroy a mirror than to look into it. Karma and natural consequences, they believed they got away with it, the manipulation, the betrayal, the lies. They walked away as if nothing occurred, as if your pain was mere collateral damage, as if your silence signified surrender. But they forgot one thing: life always keeps the receipts. And karma, she doesn't arrive with fireworks or noise. She appears surgically and quietly. You may not always witness it, but you will feel it in the way their mask starts to slip. In the way the people they once manipulated begin to question their version of the truth. In the way they slowly begin to inhabit the very mess they created. The Stoics didn't hold a belief in magical justice. They believed in natural consequences. The reality is that every action sows a seed, and what sprouts is dependent on what was sown. Seneca said, "Every guilty person is his own hangman," which means nobody escapes the burden of their own conscience. You have no need to punish them. Life will do it for you. When a person lives dishonestly, their lies eventually become their reality. When they betray those who were loyal, they forge a world where no one can trust them. And when they treat other people's hearts like playthings, they find themselves emotionally bankrupt, encircled by mirrors they cannot bear to face. Your indifference is your power. You don't owe them a reaction, not a petty post, not a sarcastic reply, not a whispered warning to your mutual friends. You owe them absolutely nothing. And within that nothing lies the most devastating message of all. They no longer matter to the untrained eye. Indifference seems like weakness, but to a Stoic, it is supreme strength. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Indifference is not apathy, it is clarity. It means you no longer permit yourself to be emotionally hijacked by individuals who flourish in chaos. You see their manipulation, you recognize their games, but you make the choice not to participate. That's not weakness, that is evolution. the return that never happens. They always circle back. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not today, but one day, when the silence becomes too loud, when their new source of supply runs dry, when the mask finally slips and the weight of their own hollowness is unbearable, they will reach for the one place they last felt control. You! They will send a text out of the blue. They'll accidentally like an old picture. They will discover a way to remind you of their existence. But here's the change. You are different now. And when their name appears, you don't feel fear. You don't feel hate. You don't even feel anger. You feel nothing. Let's break it down with brutal honesty. Narcissists don't miss you. They miss the access to youth of control, the validation, the emotional reaction. You were the mirror for their illusion, and your silence broke that reflection. So their return isn't because they've changed. It's because their new supply of manipulation failed, and they recall how easy it once was. They don't come back for love. They come back for leverage. Reclaiming your dignity, they may have mocked you for being quiet, dismissed you for being kind, and taken you for granted when you were generous. But the one thing they could never take is your dignity. Smeared your name, but they never touched your character. They might have toyed with your emotions, but they never reached your core. Because dignity isn't something you hand over. It's something you reclaim. After the storm, a version of you emerges quieter, more focused, more grounded, and less reactive. People will notice. You no longer engage in gossip. You don't react to every provocation. You're harder to reach. Not from bitterness, but from being selective with your energy. You stopped over-explaining and started living from a place of profound self. That is what makes you unforgettable, not the volume of your shouts. But the grace with which you rebuilt, there comes a moment when those who betrayed you understand they've lost access not just to your attention or your time, but to your very essence. They remember your loyalty, your non-judgmental listening, your generosity, and that version of you is now gone. You didn't become cold, you became clear. You didn't harden your heart, you raised your standards. And even if they beg, even if they apologize, they can express regret, but they cannot re-enter. Your peace is non-negotiable. That's your new power. That's Stoic freedom to get the same you back, because that version they betrayed no longer exists. Let's conclude with this truth, what they can never take. They may have taken your time, they may have wasted your love, they might have disrespected your trust, but your soul was never taken by them. Your growth was never taken by them. Your capacity to rise, rebuild, and move beyond the fire was never taken by them, and that is their deepest regret, not that you departed, but that their return is impossible. In every betrayal story, a moment arrives when the tables silently turn, not through a dramatic rant, not with a public confrontation, but with your peace, with your absence, with your rise. That is the moment it dawns on them. I didn't just walk away. I created something I can no longer reach. And your existence suddenly becomes a mirror reflecting everything they squandered, everything they lost, everything they failed to appreciate. You didn't teach them the lesson. Life did. You didn't give lectures. You didn't need to. Gloat, you sent no moral lessons or closure texts. You allowed the silence to do the work. You let your own elevation speak more loudly than any words could. That is the elegance of emotional intelligence. You don't respond to wounds from the same place they were inflicted. You rise and let a new reality create the noise. And that new reality, a deeper pain than any revenge could. Your growth becomes their mirror. The very person they called too sensitive now holds better boundaries than they ever will. The person they once dismissed now moves with quiet purpose and confidence. The person they attempted to break is now encircled by inner strength, alignment, and respect, and all they are able to do is watch from the very sidelines they built for themselves. Because when you move beyond the people who betrayed you, punishing them isn't necessary. You become the punishment. Let's use a real example. She was the lesson. Consider Sarah. Her ex mocked her goals, belittled her at every opportunity, and treated her like she was replaceable. When she finally left, he assumed she would be back, as always, but she didn't come back this time. From a distance, he watched as she improved her body, built her business, and healed her soul. Years later, she felt no hatred for him. She didn't have to, because she was no longer the same person. He once saw her as weak. Now he couldn't even look her in the eye. Not because of any threat from her, but because her very presence forced him to see everything he had thrown away. And that is the power you gain when you become the lesson. When you possess clarity, you don't require closure. So many people hold out for that final conversation. They seek apologies, explanations, closure. But the reality is this: closure isn't something they can provide you. It's something you must give yourself, and that clarity emerges when you stop needing their understanding. It arrives when your craving for validation disappears. It comes when you at last prioritize your own peace above being right, because as your life gets better in silence, they feel every single step you take forward. Even if your footsteps are never heard by them again, their guilt becomes their sentence. They may put on a show in public, but they are grieving in private. Not always over you, but over who they became. Because when a person betrays a good soul, they don't simply lose a partnership. They lose the part of themselves that had access to something real. You were the blessing they mishandled, the chapter they ended too soon, the opportunity they misjudged. Now you are gone not from hatred for them, but from a newfound love for yourself. And the feeling they have now isn't anger, it's not jealousy, it's shame. You have become the reminder. Every time they meet someone who reminds them of your kindness, they will flinch. Every time they attempt to replicate what you gave so effortlessly, they will fail. Because you were not just a phase, you were a standard, a mirror, a test day. Were unprepared to meet. And your existence now reminds them of everything they have yet to fix inside themselves. You are the reminder they can never mute. Your silence is the most resounding sound. Let's finish this chapter with a truth they will never admit aloud. I thought I was over it, but they're still in my head, and I'm not even in theirs. You didn't win through cruelty. You didn't win by being louder. You won by being unbothered, by letting it go, by healing more deeply than they ever hurt you. And now, you're not merely the one that got away. You are the one they will never truly get over. They thought that elevating themselves meant walking away from you, that discarding you as an afterthought would enhance their status. But life doesn't reward betrayal. Life responds to energy, and energy never lies. People often claim they're living their best life after hurting me. And perhaps, for a time, it appears that way. They are smiling, posting, and thriving on the surface. But time reveals all, because betrayal is more than a moral error. It is a spiritual fracture. You cannot violate someone's trust, manipulate their heart, and simply walk away clean. Even if it goes unseen, even if no one ever calls them out, life remembers the bill always comes. You don't pursue justice, you embody it. As you rise, as you construct a life of power, purpose, and peace, revenge becomes unnecessary because your very transformation is the justice, the boundaries you enforce, the discipline you build, the self-worth you reclaim. The empire you build in silence, all of it becomes a mirror. And that mirror is what haunts them, showing them not just what they lost, but who they lacked, the courage to become you became, the very thing they never foresaw, free. Stoic philosophy doesn't endorse revenge or petty whims. It champions character, order, and the long game. As Marcus Aurelius said, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. So you don't retaliate, you don't react. You rise, because self-mastery is true power. And when they witness you glowing in silence, elevating without a sound, and becoming immune to their chaos, is a loss from which they will never recover. The ultimate loss is irrelevance. No audience means no identity. No control means no power. No reaction means no relevancy. And once a manipulator becomes irrelevant to you, their world diminishes. They don't subsist on peace, they subsist on chaos. They are fueled by your triggers, your reactivity, your confusion. Take that away, and they dissolve not in a physical sense, but emotionally and spiritually. They are still breathing, but not in your reality. And that is what they never saw coming. You shut the door without uttering a single word. You didn't perform your healing or announce your growth. You simply became unreachable energetically, emotionally. And as they silently scroll through your life, a devastating realization hits them. You became untouchable. Not because they couldn't physically reach you, but because you no longer look in their direction. That is the ultimate power. Your rise is self-respect, not spite. Let's be clear. hatred did not fuel your growth. It was never about proving a point to anyone. It was about finally seeing your own worth and building a life from that newfound clarity. You don't rise to punish anyone. You rise because you refuse to stay diminished just to be loved. And that, in itself, is divine justice. A final thought. One day, they will say, "I really should have treated them better." But by that time, you will be so far gone in your new life, in your purpose, in your peace, that their words will not even create an echo. You won't require justice, or revenge, or closure, because you have become all three. You chose peace instead of chasing revenge. You became a storm in silence instead of collapsing. And now, they remember you not for being loud, but because your absence reverberates more strongly than your presence ever did. You are not the broken one anymore. You are the warning. If you were betrayed, used, and discarded by someone as if you were meaningless, let this be your pivotal moment. Don't fight to prove your worth. Don't seek revenge. Become the person they never thought you could be. Become unapologetically whole, unbothered, untouchable. Because, in the end, nothing devastates a betrayer's life more than seeing you flourish. Without them, and knowing they are no longer a character in the story they once thought they controlled. Now, your voice is the one that matters. What was the most powerful move you made to ensure a toxic person never re-entered your life? Was it a boundary you maintained? A moment of silence that conveyed everything? A shift in mindset that transformed your pain into power? In the comments, share your wisdom. Your story could be precisely what someone else needs to hear to reclaim their own power today. And if this video resonated with your soul, like it, share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe to Think Stoic, 101 where healing becomes legendary and silence becomes strength. This is more than just another video. This is your new beginning.